Hello, everybody. Welcome to our town hall on serving on boards and commissions. I'm really overjoyed with the amount of people who signed up. We had over 400 registrants for this town hall, and it shows the level of interest. And for me, it's really important because this is how I started my public service, serving on the Child Care Partnerships Council in San Mateo County, a county-wide board, and then on the State Workforce Development Board, where I served on for 7 years. And that's what really got me into service at obviously you can serve from outside the system as well, and nonprofit boards, as so many of us do. And I started a nonprofit called Full Circle Fund. But in terms of serving on boards and commissions, that was really my start to get engaged day to day with the work of the county and the work of the state. As Arthur Ashe has said, he said, start where you are, use what you have, do what you can. And you've also, I'm sure, heard the maxim, all politics is local. And being able to start at whether it's at the local level, on a city commission, whether at the county level, working on a county board or commission, or at the state level, there are lots of opportunities. But it can be quite mysterious how you can apply for any of these, how it works. And that's what we're having this today. I just had a reunion of one of my Stanford graduate school classes, and we had a panel on the next 25 years. And a lot of people were at this stage of their lives where they had a little more time and they wanted to get back. And when I mentioned that we were doing this session, a lot of them said, send me the link, I want to sign up. So I think that accounts for some of the rush of registrations we've had here recently. And again, just really grateful to all of you who have shown interest, and hopefully this will be helpful and productive. We're going to save questions for the end after we hear from our three panelists, because they're going to address boards and commissions at all levels. And I think some of the questions will apply to all of them. As I mentioned, I was on the Child Care Partnerships Council of San Mateo County, and that was an incredible way to learn about all that was going on in the county, to try to be a leader in both childcare and in early learning. There were three groups. There was a policy committee, which I was mostly focused on. There was a workforce committee, and something about called Build Up, right, which is really about facilities. And I'm happy to say on the workforce committee, when I started, we had entry level people in San Mateo County making only $17.50 an hour, $17.50 an hour. And now through the work we've done at the state level, partly educated about what I learned locally, we have folks in the county, including Peninsula Family Services. They're starting folks at $28 an hour. This is without a college degree or a master's degree. With a college degree and a master's degree, we have up to 100% reimbursement now for getting those degrees, hopefully locally at our community colleges. And people with a master's degree, in some cases, can make up to six figures. And that is the kind of impact that I love. It's very tangible that I've been able to say, and that's because of my time there. And Build Up became Build Up California. The county effort here really inspired the statewide effort. And by 2022, well, Build Up San Mateo had 525 family care providers, 484 centers in its network. And Build Up California has preserved more than 8,000 child care spaces and created over 2,000 new spaces now across the state. And I'm incredibly proud of that. And I continue to follow along with all the work that's being done. And again, it helps me do my job better at a state level. So I wanted to now introduce our panelists so you can hear from them. And then again, I will moderate some questions at the end. So I'm pleased to introduce three individuals who are actively involved in boards and commissions at the state, county, and city levels. First up, we'll hear from Morgan Carvajal. She is the appointments secretary to Governor Gavin Newsom. Then we'll hear from Linda Wolin, a longtime public servant here in our county level, and she's chief of staff for San Mateo County Supervisor Dave Pine, who is just wrapping up 12 years of just really incredible service here to the county. And then Heather Glazer is the city clerk for the city of Mountain View. So first we'll have Morgan up. She's been appointment secretary since May of this year. Prior to that, she served as Chief Deputy Appointments Secretary for the Office of the Governor for 4 years. She's also worked as a legislative advocate and a legislative aide to State Senator Fran Pavley, who I will mention passed really one of our pioneering climate laws here in California, AB 32, which was our cap and trade law. Morgan, please, I know you have some slides to share with us as well. Thank you for being here.
Absolutely, and thank you so much, Senator, for letting me participate and allowing me and inviting me to participate in this wonderful workshop. We do these workshops up and down the state to help really bring in diverse candidates and larger pools of candidates to appoint from. I see my PowerPoint being pulled up here. Morgan Carvajal, I'm the Secretary for Governor Newsom for the appointments unit, meaning that myself and my team manage the appointments of nearly 4,000 appointments. This both includes the both boards and commissions, but also in full-time positions. And you can go ahead and go to the next slide. I'll introduce you a little bit to my team here. There we go. So if you guys, if you take a look at, and I think it's really helpful to help answer a lot of questions, this is the full appointments team for the governor's office. Each of these deputies are really committed to the governor's mission, which has always been a commitment of his to make the boards and commissions and state government look more like the state that we serve. Each of these deputies has really sort of cemented that mission into their work in each of these areas. As you can see, one person could never manage up to the 4,000 appointments that we do, and that includes about almost 400 boards and commissions. So we have a good team of about 7 deputies, Ishmael Contreras being our Chief Deputy Director, and then Samantha Diaz, Diana Essex is our Appointments Administrator, Alyssa Ochita, Curtis Lang, Rochelle Schmidt, Megan Meckelberg, and Aubrey Anthony are all of our deputies who manage and help manage most of their portfolios within the appointments unit. And I'll get more into what that means as we continue, but you can go ahead and go to the next slide. There we go. So this is, as I mentioned, we have multiple different types of appointments, boards and commissions for every single licensing profession that you can think of, nearly 400 boards and commissions. We actually have a really great, we get a lot of really great pools of candidates from Senator Becker's district, and you have a very active constituency base, not only evidenced by how many folks have registered for this seminar, but evidenced in the amount of appointments that we've made from the district, both commissioners to the CPUC, to the Air Resources Board. We've got a few constituents who are appointed to the UC College of the Law, San Francisco, the CSU Board of Trustees. We've got a few folks on the Youth Equity Commission in different workforce development spaces. Boards and commissions span every single aspect of every single policy and every licensing board within California, from our local fair boards to our statewide water resources control board. So some of these positions are full-time, some are part-time, most are volunteer. Largely they are per diem and not compensated otherwise. So having really diverse pools from not only diverse areas of the state, but individuals who bring very diverse backgrounds and diverse experiences to the boards has always been sort of what drives our appointments unit, finding folks who really help to fill the gaps, who make sure that we have representation from all areas in all spaces of government. We also do a handful of full-time administrative positions, a little bit of a different process, but overall pretty similar. I'll ask you to go to the next slide and we'll talk a little bit about how to search for these opportunities. One more time. There we go. The governor has a website, gov.ca.gov/appointments is an easy way to get here. You can see under open positions, you have current opportunities, board and commission vacancies. I will say these resources are easy to find, not as easy to navigate. I think the best advice that I can give to anyone who's looking for an appointment would be to give us a call or send us an email. This website also includes all of our contact information, and so you can easily just email any of the deputies, as you saw from the earlier slide. If you're interested in education, you'll see that Alyssa Ochita handles education portfolio for the office. You feel free to email her at any point if you are interested in opportunity. when I say these resources are not as easy to navigate, that's simply because the appointments unit knows when things are coming up, when different term limits might be coming up. Each of the boards and commissions are different in what their statutory requirements are around how long a term is, when the term ends, whether or not there's a grace period, whether or not the member serves at pleasure, whether or not they're eligible for reappointment. And so our appointments unit is very well versed in each of their areas within their portfolio, and so can help answer any of those questions for anyone who gives us a call who's interested in being appointed. Go ahead and go to the next slide. There we go. So when you're searching for opportunities, there's a couple different resources. One, the website, which we just went over. We also post a lot to the LinkedIn, both our personal LinkedIns, but also the governor's LinkedIn. And again, first and foremost, I would recommend giving the office a call, shooting us an email, calling us directly to talk to us. One of the things I will note is that we are searching for and know our portfolios very well. So when we're looking for someone, we might be looking for a particular background on a board that you may not be interested in, but giving us a call and having the conversations with us is going to open up the amount of interest areas where we might have opportunities to send back to you, right? So it's a lot of dialogue, a lot of back and forth, a lot of us getting to know you as a candidate to figure out what the best way to fill a gap is. We have a lot of different requirements that are statutory on each of our boards. For example, we've got a mental health oversight board where we have 11 new vacancies to fill, but each of those vacancies is particularly identified as needing someone with a particular background or particular experience, whether it is someone who struggles with developmental disabilities or mental health, or someone who has a family member who has challenges with mental health. There are very particular requirements for each of those seats, and our team knows those very well, and so can help talk through what those requirements are, where we have those vacancies, where we might have a great opportunity that could be a great fit. So always, if you're thinking about looking for an opportunity, give our office a call. It's the best place to start. Go ahead and go to the next slide. There is obviously an application process. The application can be found on the same website that I showed you earlier. And the process that you can anticipate, once you start that application, if you want to go to the next slide, I'll walk through just a bit. Once you fill out the application, again, it can be found on gov.ca.gov/appointments. The application itself is fairly detailed, so please do take your time. It includes your work history, any memberships that you might be a part of, any background. There's a few background questions on there to answer as well. And it really asks an important question about why do you want to serve? This isn't only an important question to answer on the application. This is sort of an important question to answer throughout the entire process. We will continue to ask, why are you interested in serving? Why does this board interest you? What about your background makes you interested in public service or a volunteer opportunity? Those are the types of things that help us get to know you better. They help us get to know your values. That's what we share with the governor. Ultimately, when we bring the governor a recommendation for an appointment, we are going to base that recommendation in who you are and why you serve and what your values are. That's really going to help us get to a point of what the best fit is going to be as well. There are, of course, a few interviews along the way. There may be an agency interview. Again, this is going to differ a little bit between what type of appointment you're looking for, whether you're looking for a full-time appointment versus a volunteer board appointment. There are going to be different steps along the way, but feel free, obviously, to ask any of the deputies or give myself a call. Depending on the board, there might be a little bit of a different process. But in the end, our recommendation is ultimately made to the governor, and the governor ultimately signs off on every appointment that's made. So again, it's really, we are really storytellers in the end, because we are telling your story to the governor in order to help him feel comfortable with making that appointment. Go ahead and go to the next slide, which I think is just questions. So I could wrap there, and I will wait for any other questions that there might be, and looking forward to the other presentations.
Thank you. Yes, we will hold questions till the end, because I think it'll apply to a number of different speakers. Thank you very much. Now
Absolutely.
we're very fortunate to have Linda Wolin, as I mentioned at the top. Linda Wolin has a tremendous experience serving San Mateo County. Really glad to have you on here, Linda. Take it away.
Well, thank you so much, Senator Becker, and thank you for including the County of San Mateo in this really important discussion. And I also appreciate the shout out for the CCPC and Build Up, which are Supervisor Pine's projects as well. I'm going to start with this. The county's boards and commissions ecosystem is of really enormous importance to the functioning of the county, and particularly to the policymaking body, which is the Board of Supervisors. Indeed, most of our nearly 40 commissions are advisory to the board, and the board truly values the recommendations that emerge from all of our commissions. I'm going to run through this quick PowerPoint presentation, and then I want to share with you a few examples of really how commission input has helped shape board and county policy. Next slide, please. Sorry, next slide. First, regarding the role of commissions, they do provide an important perspective to the county government and further the overall public benefit through direct community participation. Commissions can gather and analyze public input and serve as subject matter experts for the Board of Supervisors. Most are advisory. Next slide. The most important requirement is simply to be sorry, we're a slide ahead. Go back one. Sorry, back. Yeah, here. So the most important requirement is simply to be a resident of San Mateo County. Some boards and commissions may have more specific requirements, but in general, it's just that. Next slide. As mentioned, most of the commissions are advisory and were created by board action. A few may have decision-making authority. I'm happy to answer questions about those at the end, but my presentation today is mostly focused on the advisory ones. Next slide. As for the role of commissioners, we do ask for a commitment, not just to show up for meetings, but also to serve in leadership role or participate in a committees, or just to become active in the work of your commission. And there's a lot of ways to do that. And we do ask members to bring an equity and community-based lens to their work. Next slide. This is a list of the many boards, commissions, and committees that we have in the county. I'm going to leave this slide up for a minute so that folks can digest what's on there, and I'll keep talking. As you can see, there's a broad range of topics that are covered by our commissions. The commissions on the slide that are in red indicate a current vacancy. Vacancies generally remain open for a designated time period. This can vary from commission to commission, but typically about 2 months. We always have vacancies, so it's important to keep checking back to see what's available. The process for applying to commissions is relatively simple. There is a basic application, kind of like a common app for those of you who might be familiar with that, although some commissions may have supplementary questions. In an effort to diversify the applicant pool, in order to get more diversity on our commissions, we've recently revamped and streamlined the application itself to allow an applicant to showcase perhaps the non-traditional educational or other lived experience rather than having to check the proverbial box. And much like Morgan was saying, in your application, we'd really like you to tell us what makes you qualified and tell your own story. Next slide. This QR code will take you directly to the county's main page for boards and commissions, and there you can go through a little bit more the work of the individual commissions and to see what vacancies are available. Once the recruitment period is done, the president of the Board of Supervisors will assign 1, maybe 2 supervisors to review the written applications. A subset of those applicants will then be selected for a panel interview with those supervisors, and then recommendations will be made for appointment. Eventually, the nomination will come to the full Board of Supervisors for approval, after which the nominee will be sworn in. What supervisors are looking for in general are a strong commitment, some diversity, an interest, perhaps lived experience to participate in the commission. And interviews are considered more of a get to know you conversation than a more formal job interview. If you could stop sharing the screen. To wrap it up, I wanted to share with you some examples of the kinds of county actions and policies that have been shaped by our boards and commissions, just to give you a flavor for what goes on. In the LGBTQIA+ commission, which is the one that I've been the most involved in for the better part of 8 years, the commissioners were very interested in SB 107 related to gender affirming healthcare. So they brought that legislation to the Board of Supervisors and asked that the board take an official position for the County of San Mateo to be a supporter of that bill, which the board did. The commission brought up the idea of having a transgender employee policy, which then became a policy of our Human Resources Department. It's countywide. The commission has helped build awareness around all just gender restrooms and helped impact our policy for new construction to make sure that there's all gender restrooms available in new buildings. The Veterans Commission advocated for a South San Francisco shuttle to stop at Colma Veterans Village, and that involved cooperation between the county, the city of Colma, city of South San Francisco, and Samtrans to make it happen. And this helps veterans with mobility issues to give them access to public transit without having to walk half a mile. And then they also help support AB 46, which established a tax exemption for uniform services, retirement pay, and survivor benefits. And then the Commission on the Status of Women, just as another example, is in the midst of conducting independent research around the economic empowerment of women in the county, resulting in a report that included several recommendations to the board that are still percolating. And they also looked into the state's pay equity pledge, which the Board of Supervisors eventually adopted. It was a resolution to sign that pledge. So those are just a few examples, just to let everyone know how valuable we find boards and commissions to the work of the Board of Supervisors and the county in general. And I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. And I should have noted you have over 30 years of experience and service in government at various levels, and just really appreciate you being here with us to share that knowledge. And now I'd like to invite up Heather Glazer. Heather, as I mentioned, is the city clerk now in Mountain View. Before that, she has a lot of experience. So she has 19 years of experience at the municipal level, including Mountain View, where she started in 2021. Before that, she was at the city of Malibu as deputy city clerk and the city clerk. I'm sure she could tell. It's much nicer up here, than it is in Malibu. Anyway, we're really grateful to her for being here to share her wisdom and insights to applying to boards and commissions at the city level. Take it away, Heather.
Hi, thank you, Senator. Again, my name is Heather Glazer. I'm the city clerk for the city of Mountain View. I'm really happy to be with you here today. As I go over the information for city and town appointments, I just want to encourage everyone that may not be a City of Mountain View resident to definitely connect with the clerk in your city or town. If you feel like volunteering for a board, commission, or committee is the right thing for you. Every city and town handles things a bit differently. So this slide deck is definitely tailored a little bit more to Mountain View residents. But I hope that there are some takeaways that will help you on your way to being successful as a volunteer where you live. So how does this work? Simply put, the voters elect the members of the council, and that's the legislative and policy-making body of the city. And then the council appoints members to its boards, commissions, and committees, which are most often volunteer positions strictly. Councils really rely on the volunteer efforts of its members to boards, commissions, and committees to broaden the venue for its public input, vet ideas, shape projects, and provide input to the council before it takes final action on a matter. So how, the types of boards, commissions, and committees, again, like I said, are going to vary a little bit from city to town. The types of services offered by the city and the general makeup and needs of the community will greatly change what types of boards, commissions, and committees there are. But in the county of Santa Clara, the most common bodies are the ones having to do with arts or culture, parks and recreation, community planning, and youth services. This is the most current list of boards, commissions, and committees in the city of Mountain View. All of them have various requirements for service, and we're actually in open recruitment right now for a lot of these. If any Mountain View residents are watching and interested, please contact me at the information that's available at the end of the slide, and I'd be happy to help you with additional details. So what does the path to being appointed look like? Well, first, understanding why you want to serve on the body, and I think that this was touched on by a few of the other speakers. Reach out to seated council members and request individual meetings. Council members really appreciate the opportunity to learn about you and ask you questions. And that gives you a chance to find out more about their expectations and the expectations of the body members, and may help you shape your motivation for serving on the body that you have your mind set on. Also, during interviews, the interviewing members may be made up of a subcommittee of the council or the entire council, depending, and they'll expect to hear you articulate your reasons for wanting to serve on the body you've applied on. Also, being on a body is a commitment to your community, the city council and city staff. So doing your research from basics like, are there qualifications for serving on this body, and do you meet them? Do you know when the body meets and with what frequency? And is that a time investment that you're willing to make? Do you know what type of documentation may be needed to file for application? Other things that are excellent to research and understand before applying are things like the Ralph M. Brown Act, sometimes known as California Sunshine Law, which lays out the confines of the law within which the body can operate. Similarly, we definitely recommend that you take the time to understand the projects recently reviewed by the body that you want to apply to and familiarize yourself with its annual work plan. Something you can also ask yourself is, do I have a full understanding of what the body does and does not weigh in, and how it operates? For example, if you wanted to apply to the Performing Arts Commission in Mountain View, thinking that you might be choreographing the next play that comes through the city, not only will you probably be disappointed in being on the body if you're appointed to it, but you'll probably also haven't attended any of the meetings to see that those are just not the types of tasks that are assigned to that body. So even though it's not a requirement, to ensure a clearer view of what types of projects a body takes on, attending at least one meeting, but more is more, before applying is always a good idea. And actually, in the city of Mountain View, that's a factor that the council takes into consideration when making its appointments. So again, interviewers are going to be looking to see that you have a vested interest in the work that the body is doing for the community before you're appointed to it. And then finally, when you do attend meetings of the body, read the public materials that are provided and engage in a meaningful way during the periods of public comment. And then if you're appointed to a board, commission, or committee, what do you need to know to be successful at this stage? Well, the first thing is to not be afraid to ask questions when things don't make sense to you. You'll likely have professional staff that serve the city working with the body that you're appointed to. So respect their time and effort and use the information and resources they provide in advance of the meeting so that you can prepare. The body works best when all members have given similar effort to make an informed recommendation to the council. So this means also taking the comments of your fellow community members into consideration before and during the meeting, rather than settling on how you think you might vote before all viewpoints have been considered. And finally, it's always helpful to keep in mind that you are one part of a body that makes recommendations as a unit. So while everyone has their own opinions, it's the goal of the group to come to a consensus, or at least make a recommendation that a majority can agree on. So be ready to work together as a team for a successful outcome. So these are just a few of the high-level recommendations for being appointed to and serving on a body in the city of Mountain View. Like I said, your mileage might vary depending on the city or town that you're in, but I really hope that this helps you on your way to serving your community in this capacity. And I know for the city of Mountain View, we're always looking for volunteers to serve on these bodies. It's a really excellent way to give back to the community and have a part in shaping recommendations to the council. So like I said, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me specifically if you're a City of Mountain View resident.
Terrific. I'd like to invite everyone back now, and we'll go through some questions. Really appreciate those presentations and everyone hitting much of the important points that were raised actually in a lot of the questions. There was a question about financial disclosures. I know that when I served on the State Workforce Board, we did have to do financial disclosures. Excuse me, I'm not sure at all levels. Can you guys all quickly address that one?
Yeah, especially at the state level, each of our appointees, no matter what you've been appointed to, there are Form 700 filings that have to be completed, which are financial disclosures with the state. Yeah.
I'm going to answer that it depends on which commission, so it's a case by case.
Or
I would
county
say
case by case? And Heather, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I would say it's the same thing. Probably about half of our boards, commissions, and committees have a requirement to file Form 700.
Okay, great. And when it lists the board, does it say which ones it says, hey, this does require a financial disclosure? Okay.
I don't
That's
believe our website does, but that's a great idea, so I'll take that back.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah,
Good.
it's
We're
a part
getting
of our
servicing.
it's a part of our
servicing.
application. Sorry.
It is. So you said, Heather?
Yeah, it's listed on the application itself.
Okay, good. All right, we're getting some good ideas too. But yes, that was a question that came up a couple of times. There's a question about what is the demographic makeup across states, boards, and commissions, and how far off are they from being representative? I know at the state level, there's certainly been a focus on increasing diversity and measuring some of that. Any quick comments on that, Morgan?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say every time our team goes and looks at a vacancy or goes to fill a vacancy on any board or commission, the first thing we do is look at what is the current composition and what's missing. Is it a diverse voice? Is it a rural voice? Is it an urban city voice? So we sort of consider that as sort of a leading driver of where we're looking to build out candidate pools for any specific board or commission. So it's definitely the first question we ask is always which voice is missing here.
Yeah, and a lot of the boards do, I know, have specific slots too for, specifically for community members, or maybe in other cases, reserved for someone of a certain age for a seniors commission or something. I know a lot of those do have specific, are kind of specifically reserved around that. A question came up in the Q&A online. I serve on a 5-person commission in the town of Portola Valley, subject to the Brown Act. Sometimes getting a quorum is hard as we can't meet over Zoom anymore. How are your volunteer positions affected by the Brown Act? Do some meet remotely, particularly the state appointments? I know I had a bill on this trying to have for some more remote attendance, especially for multi-county boards. For example, Peninsula Clean Energy has also covers, which is mostly San Mateo County, also covers Los Baños, and we don't want someone always having to drive up from Los Baños for every meeting. What are your thoughts on that question at various levels?
I know for the state, and one thing I will say, sort of a silver lining, if there is one to COVID, was that we did have all of the boards and commissions joining virtually for a short time. What we saw was an increase in our ability to bring regional representation to boards that are centered in or central to Sacramento. It helped us to really diversify a lot of the boards and commissions. The rules have shifted a little bit, as I know you know, Senator, to where now there is a sort of a hybrid to Bagley-Keene requirements on state boards. But there is still a requirement that the quorum of the board be in person. And so a lot of our boards, what a lot of our boards have done to adopt sort of a something to continue to allow for, to continue to encourage the regional diversity that we have, is they're now meeting throughout the state. I think it's important that we're meeting people where they're at. And so boards will meet for the Arts Council, for example, will meet in San Francisco. They'll meet down in San Diego one time. They'll meet up farther north or even in the Central Valley. And so a lot of the boards and commissions have started to sort of set meeting locations throughout the state. I know the Coastal Commission does this as well, as they meet up and down the coast for each of their meetings in a different location. This helps us on the regional side, but then on the requirement side, it is now that a quorum of the board needs to be present in person, and if a quorum is present, then other members can join virtually.
So if I can add to that, the county works in a very similar fashion, but in a much smaller geographic area, obviously, than the state. So I think all the boards and commissions really struggle with this issue. I agree that during COVID, it did allow for diverse voices to participate. Maybe it has to do with your working hours or childcare or other things that might impact your ability to participate. And now that we're kind of back to, pre-COVID, mostly pre-COVID Brown Act rules, some bodies do really struggle with quorum, and I think it's become part of the interview and recruitment process to really understand and explain to applicants about the commitment that's required to participate in these bodies, and I think that continues to be a challenge.
Yeah, I'll just say similarly, it's been difficult in the post-COVID world to kind of reel people back into all in person. Even though we have a couple of tools in our toolkit, mostly people have to be in person. And so it's definitely presented a challenge for our council in, having the level of interest in serving that we really feel like we had during the pandemic.
And I would just add just one final note. When we have folks who are interested in a board or commission, what we always advice to them is always to Google the board or commission that they're interested in and look at where the last year's meetings have been located and make sure you can attend in person to those meetings. Obviously, this is going to require appointees to be really committed to showing up in person and really committed to the work that the board or commission is doing, which does narrow the pool a little bit. But we do sort of point everyone to that website, that each of the boards and commissions has a website, so you can kind of look at where they meet generally throughout the year to know kind of ahead of time when the meetings are going to be, at least to be able to plan to be there.
Good. Well, a lot of people asked about that, so I really appreciate that. And I'm torn myself because it's certainly helpful, like with the Child Care Partnership Council. And again, it's easier on a county or city level, but we're all in person. We had a lot of brainstorms, a lot of value that came for us all being in person. But again, if there's multi-county boards or state boards, having the option occasionally, I know if people were sick, we were able to make some accommodations there and have them they can be remotely, but in a public place that is still messaged where they are. So anyway, and I know there was a kind of big compromise 2 years ago that Blanca Rubio led, and I was encouraged to wait till after that settles in a little bit to see if we need to do more. But I appreciate all of you answering that one, because it's certainly something that comes up. Let's see, looking through the questions. Someone asked about Secretary Carbajal. You already mentioned your office number. I'll post it again in response there. There's a question, are there certain times of the year / election cycles when you have more positions to fill? That was for Secretary Carbajal, but could be for others as well.
Yes and no. I mean, I think we have, our terms are they're either 2 years, in some cases 4 years. We've got some as long as 12-year terms. Those are kind of always continuously coming up. I would say that generally speaking, the election cycle more impacts administrative positions than it does boards and commissions. And so we see a bigger flow toward the end of an administration in like our paid administrative positions. But again, on our boards and commissions, those are really set to terms. A lot of the licensing board terms, which is a big chunk of appointments that that we do, those all come up in June. And so in June, we have a pretty heavy load of reappointments and or vacancies that come available, just because a big chunk of those boards, their term limits end on like June 15th. So we have like a big review of those at the end of the year. There's obviously a good number of boards who terms either end or switch over. And so we're reconsidering reappointments and new appointments around that time too. But it's pretty fluid throughout the year as far as the vacancies go. We have quite a few just throughout the year that we're constantly looking to fill.
You want me to answer that as well?
Sure.
So most of the terms are 4-year terms, and they generally start at the beginning of the fiscal year, which for us is July 1, and then they last a full 4 years. But there's so many, unexpected resignations or folks who move on in different ways. So there's a kind of a rotating vacancy that's kind of always happening. And then I think also when we do recruitments, because of that, even if there's only one vacancy and only one person is selected, we do try to establish a wait list so that if another vacancy becomes available within the year, we can pull someone from the wait list. So all that to say that keep checking the list, apply when there's something of interest to you, and then you'll kind of get in the queue.
Same for us. Most of our terms are 4 years staggered, and they start January 1. So usually we're doing a big push for recruitment. Like I said, right now we're recruiting for year-end terms, but we do have lots of vacancies throughout the year. So we're constantly updating our website with new opportunities and pulling from people that maybe weren't selected in the last round just to see if they're still interested. So definitely encourage people to keep checking our website.
Great. Someone asks, Brandon for Secretary Carbajal, if they've submitted an application, they're trying to check the status. What is the appropriate way? I'm sure you can't answer all, constantly, but is there a periodic update, or how would you answer that one?
Yeah, our system doesn't do that at this point. We are looking at some ways to sort of update and bring our system up to date where it's a bit more interactive, a little easier for the user to check in on status, check in on whether or not their application's been reviewed, things like that. Right now, I would say the best way to go about that is to submit your application and then reach out to the appointments office. It shows us your commitment and your interest level is high, that you've gone the extra step, not just to submit the application, but then also to make a personal contact. And then it gives you a contact in our office to continue to check in with as we move through the process. And so, again, our current system is not as good as we'd like it to be. We hope to leave a better system behind in this administration, but there's always the option to just give us a call, shoot us an email. We're really great about kind of getting back in touch with folks. The one thing I'd add is that our applications never go away. So if you applied for an appointment back in 2019, it still pops up. If I'm searching for like applicants for any specific board, I'm still getting 2019 applications as well. So the application pool is always just growing. It's never reducing, right? And so if you've applied, back in 2020, back in 2019, your application still exists for our administration. And so you don't necessarily need to reapply. You can just contact our office and say, I applied a few years back, sort of curious if you guys have any new openings, or I'm sort of shifting my career and looking for something in this space. It all kind of hinders on that initial conversation.
Okay. There was a question about stipends for positions, reimbursements for travel meals from James in Menlo Park. As you mentioned, some are, and Secretary Carbajal, you mentioned there's some that are full-time paid. There's others that are more part-time. I don't believe the ones that I was on had stipends. Are there sometimes stipends or reimbursements for travel in all of your experience?
Most of our volunteer boards do. Most of them have a per diem, and then also have you're able to submit for reimbursement for travel, because a lot of the boards are trying to meet more throughout the state. They do cover the travel and travel expenses and costs like that, and then also a per diem for most of those boards.
State
the
or
ones
city?
that aren't full time, obviously, there's a handful of full time. There's a handful of part-time, and then for the most of the rest of them are per diem with travel.
I just know we voted to raise from $100 a day to $200 a day for some boards and commission compensation. At the county or city level, is there sometimes reimbursements?
We've talked about it a lot as an equity issue to really allow participation from folks who literally can't afford to spend an evening coming to Redwood City and participating in a commission. Possibly offering opportunities for daycare or meals. But it's with the number of commissions and commissioners we have, we'd want to do it across the board and be fair about it. And so it's haven't come to ground with it. And right now it's not an option.
Yeah, at the city level, none of the boards, commissions, or committees are paid, and we don't offer a stipend at this time.
Thank you. Somebody asked if there was a recommendation from, for example, myself or our office was important or necessary. I'd certainly say it's not necessary. I know generally we're not heavily involved. Any thoughts on that at a local level, or is it suffice to say that it's certainly not necessary? Do you have can they submit recommendations, or how does that work?
So I would say at the city level, at least, that's not something I've typically seen a lot of, and definitely not required. I would say it's more about, having the relationship with the council and understanding the body itself and doing that homework that's going to be the most motivating factor for the council to appoint you, and less about, any sort of a recommendation.
At the state level, slightly different. Obviously, it's not required at any level, but it is not also unhelpful. I think it's helpful not just to get recommendations from your local electeds, but also to look at organizations that you're involved with, organizations that you've worked closely with. Having letters of support submitted through those organizations is notable as well. I will say again, it's not required, but it's notable when we have them. And we do always sort of note those for the governor as well. When we talk about recommendations, it's nice to say, the local youth commission really supports this individual because of the work they've done on XYZ or whatever it is. So I would say, again, I wouldn't, they're not required, but they're certainly helpful in some cases.
I would say for us, it's not, you don't typically see that either. And where I have seen it has been more in the level of an introduction, where an elected official or some other leader in the community has reached out to maybe me at the staff level to say that such and such person is interested in a commission, and have me help them with the process, which is basically the primer I gave earlier about how to do the application. But then the application is considered among all the applicants for that particular vacancy.
Great. Somebody asked about Constance and Belmont. How do general public appointees to state boards and commissions influence legislators in making policy decisions, the state budget, and decisions on proposed bills? Well, I'd say in a whole bunch of ways. I can say, as I mentioned, when I was on the Child Care Partnerships Council in San Mateo County, one of our 3 major focus areas was policy. So we would make policy recommendations. Sometimes our elected assembly and senators would then carry those particular recommendations. Other times we would just weigh in on bills. And now I'm on the receiving end of that as an elected myself. On the workforce board, similarly, when I was not elected, just as a business, as a CEO in Menlo Park at part of the time, I would talk about what I was seeing, and talk about some of the traditional ways of workforce development, but also some of the new ways that we were seeing here in terms of coding academies or other things like that they were not, the rest of the board, including electeds, were not as familiar with. So I think there's a lot of opportunity to have influence in that way. We also had questions around political party. Do you have to enter your party affiliation when you're applying?
Yes, our application does ask for it. If you choose not to enter it, we do a vetting anyways, and we'll find it. it doesn't weigh heavily in the decision that's made. Like I said, we've got extremely bipartisan representation amongst boards and commissions, but yes, the application does ask for it.
For the county and city level, it does not, sounds like?
No, it's not asked and it's not considered and it doesn't play a role.
Same with the city.
Okay, great. Let's see, we got a few other live questions. Great, so some people are gonna reach out where they are. I have someone who have a nursing and public health background, want to get more engaged in policy. Are there committees that'd be a good place to start? Or is it recommended, do you have to have a governmental policy background? I imagine you guys might say if you're a nursing public health background, certainly at the county level, I know there's applicable commissions, I'm sure at the city level. Linda, any thoughts on that?
I think there's a number of commissions. I'm happy to talk to someone offline about the different ones that might be of interest, but I'd say definitely not experience in government. I mean, you do not require experience in government and public policy, but I think a lot of the commissions, even if it's not a designated seat for a nurse, let's say, to have a background in public health is very relevant to a lot of the other policy work. So I think, again, kind of be in the position of explaining to us why you think you'd be a good fit for this commission and what experience you have to bring, which might be of a professional nature, or maybe it's an interest that you've had or community work that you've done in the past, and it doesn't really necessarily have to do with your academic background or your work experience.
Excellent, good. We had a latecomer ask about PUC specifically or anything utility or energy related. I imagine Secretary Carbajal, you tell him to start at the and we'll have a recording of this, of course, sent out. So we have the information. If you want to give that URL one more time for the, can you share that one more time? Place where people start.
Yeah, absolutely. A good place to start is on our website and or giving us a call. Both we have opportunities on the website. Obviously, the PUC is a highly sought after full-time paid board and is currently full. But there are upcoming, term endings, and the governor has considerations to make on reappointments at that point. There are other boards and commissions that sort of subsequently hit on utility issues. Things like the Wildfire Advisory Board actually has a lot to do with utility issues. And so there are other areas within state government amongst many of the boards that that really touch in ancillary ways and also very direct ways on a lot of the issues, which is why, again, I will just plug one more time to give our office a call, talk to the deputies directly. Not only is it important that we hear your story and what your personal experiences are, both professionally and personally, it helps us fill gaps where we know we've got a board that seems like it might not deal with utility issues, like the Underground Dig Safe Board, which is the underground safety board that regulates sort of utility companies in their underground digging for gas lines and water lines and things like that. So areas where you wouldn't really expect to have an interest, we've got a board that you probably have an interest in. And so feel free to give our office a call, talk through that with our deputies. The deputies are really well versed in their portfolios and what they need in different areas, be it in the utilities, climate, energy space, or the education, labor, workforce development space. We've got opportunities widely spread throughout different issue areas, policy issue areas in state.
Excellent. Well, this possibly the last question. Oh, come on, two questions. Erwin, as I said, I'm 88. Should I bother trying to find a placement? Justin said, Foster City, what positions are feasible for a recent college graduate? Is there an SA sweet spot, or are there availabilities at a variety of ages and experience levels? Let's just say. Any of you want to take that?
I can take that one, and certainly what you just said is true, which is there's a variety of opportunities for people at all age levels, and all age levels have something to offer. I think specifically for the first questioner, we do have a commission on aging, and that is of interest, but there are people who are certainly not seniors who also can serve on that commission. We have a youth commission, and I believe the age that goes up to, I want to say 24, don't quote me. So there are typically high school and college students, but I think there's a few post-college who still serve on the youth commission. But we also would welcome having voices of all ages on any of the commissions.
I would just add that for the state, we don't have age requirements for service. So we have, obviously a wide variety of ages serving in any number of spots. I will say though, individually consider what you're able to do from a commitment standpoint. A lot of these boards do require you to take time away from work to attend a 2-day board meeting. And so consider that in where you're at in your career, consider that in where you're working and whether or not that's a possibility for you. The travel again is gonna also create a barrier. And so just when you're to be thoughtful about the amount of time that you're able to commit to a board. I know that's not as easy for someone who just graduated, who's really starting out their career. It may not be as easy to take the time away. So that's going to create barriers, but obviously don't let that be a factor for ruling you out of having the conversation with our office either. We will obviously talk through those issues with you, try to make something work, try to figure out where we've got a board that has less commitment. Maybe they meet biannually rather than bi-monthly. Which will be a little bit easier to accommodate. And so again, don't ever rule yourself out no matter what your background or experience is. There are no disqualifiers. We will sort of talk through and figure out where you best help us fill a gap and where you might have a strong interest in serving. There's usually a pathway to get there. I will say not 100% of the time is there a pathway to get there, but we make a really great effort to figure out what the best pathway would be to get you locked into border service or some sort of public service for the state.
Excellent. There was one final question about multi-county boards, particularly BART was mentioned. I know that, for example, Peninsula Clean Energy does work really hard to have geographic representation because, as I mentioned, there are folks, there's a lot of local electeds who sit on the board, but there's also a citizen advisory board. I don't know for BART. I know there's elected positions for BART. There may be some appointed positions as well. But again, a lot of those, just check out the board itself. It may have a combination of elected and then, appointed folks as well. So thanks for all of you. Give you a quick chance. Any final comments?
Just that we look forward to hearing from all of the constituents, the 400 plus folks who joined on today's call. We are looking forward to hearing from you, looking forward to figuring out where you best serve the state.
Thank you.
Well said, and ditto.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, we'll follow up with our office. If you'd like more information, appreciate our panelists and thank them very much for their willingness to be here, and especially their willingness to be a resource going forward. I know it can be confusing sometimes for folks, but like I said, it was critical for me, and as part of my service, I really enjoyed it, and I hope many of you will think about applying as well, because I know we'll benefit from your experience. Thank you very much.